Hello, this is Real World News, a journalism program produced by the students at QUT. My name is Almira Azam, and our guest today is Dr. Kim Osman, a Senior Research Associate in the Faculty of Creative Industries, Education and Social Justice at QUT. During her years of research, Kim has explored the complex relationship between digital and social inclusion. In recent years, Kim's research focuses on how low-income families gain access to and use technology for education and parenting as a part of their everyday lives. Good morning, Kim. Thank you for joining us today.
It's nice to be here.
Now, to start off, you're taking on quite a large topic as technology plays a part in almost everyone's everyday lives in this decade. However, your research focuses on low-income families. Can you tell us a bit about your research and why you've chosen this specific demographic?
Absolutely. So I think the key lies in that first phrase that you just used, that technology is a part of people's everyday lives. And what we know is that for low-income families, this isn't the case. A lot of families really struggle to access and use technology. And this is an issue that we knew existed before COVID. But we've obviously seen when children are trying to learn at home, as families are working from home, that this is an issue that is just becoming increasingly important, that children in low-income families have access to technology and devices and also the support to be able to use them properly.
Yeah, of course. And you did mention that since the COVID-19 pandemic began, it's gotten a lot worse. Can you tell me how your research has informed that so far and just how important it is for these families to gain access to that technology?
Absolutely. So a lot of low-income families will rely on schools. So children will go to school and they'll use computers or devices that are at school. But when families are in lockdown, that connection is broken. So for a lot of low-income families who are already part of a very large educational divide, then fall further behind their peers. And this around Australia varies quite a bit among states. So we know in Queensland that they have a connection speed in schools at around 25 kilobits per student, which is 200 times lower than the rate that students in New South Wales access. And additionally in Queensland, there's been no policy responses for low-income families for students learning at home. So what's happening is that charities are having to step in and fill the gap by providing devices, but they can't always meet the demands of low-income families. In New South Wales, there's been a little bit better policy response, but again, they're making 20,000 devices and dongles available, but the demand from low-income families is around about 80,000 students. So there's still a really big gap there. That's just going to get bigger the longer that families stay in lockdown.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned the policies aren't meeting their demands. So do you think that it would be beneficial to get more government support to take some of the pressure off those charities?
Absolutely. So the federal government released their digital economy strategy and there wasn't a huge amount about digital inclusion in this, so we'd like to see a little bit more. We'd really like to see a coordinated policy response from the federal government that looks at the needs of low-income families. We'd also like to see a response from industry as well. So perhaps the telcos making available a low-income or no-cost broadband product for these families so that they can connect at home. One of the stopgaps that families are doing at the moment is driving to public areas to access Wi-Fi. So, sitting outside of McDonald's or going to a library, and children are doing their homework using this public Wi-Fi, and that's just not really acceptable in Australia in this day and age.
Of course, and that's also given the fact that I'm assuming that their access to the technology required, such as the devices like iPads, laptops, that is hard enough on top of their lack of access to the internet.
Oh, absolutely. So, finding one device in a family that might be shared among 3 or 4 children, parents then have to make decisions about, who's using that device, for how long. Parents are making decisions if they do have data about how that data is shared as well. And one of the other issues that we're finding is that, you can provide a device and you can provide data, but students also need to have the skills to be able to use these. They need support at home to be able to complete their homework, complete their schoolwork, and also just have fun on these devices. Use these devices for creativity, for making things, for engaging in entertainment and social interaction. And all of these soft skills that they learn by using digital media are also really important.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that during my school years, I definitely used that device much more than I thought I would, just to access Khan Academy, just to just add value to my education. Otherwise, it doesn't really serve its purpose.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we do know is that young people who are transitioning from school to work aren't necessarily leaving with the skills that they need to enter the workforce. And there's a range of reasons for this, but one thing we know is that having a PC and having an iPad is two different things. So being able to create using an iPad is completely different to be able to use the desktop apps that are available on a PC or a laptop. And it's really important that students have access to a variety of devices so that they can develop a full suite of skills to enter the workplace with.
Of course, that restriction is definitely very, I guess, disadvantaging as it is. So I can only imagine how much worse it would be, especially during COVID when learning relies online. What do you hope that your research will achieve, and who do you hope will learn or benefit from your results?
Well, we're hoping that the families will ultimately benefit. So we're actually going to be going out and talking to families around Australia. We're also going to be talking to community organisations who are working to support these families and schools in 6 locations around Australia. And these are regional, suburban and rural locations. And we're hoping that at the end of the research that we'll be able to sit down in a series of co-design workshops with our participants and actually form some concrete programs, policies and practices that our charity partners and also third sector organisations around Australia can roll out that really improve the lives of low-income families.
And what would that look like, the rollout you mentioned?
So we would be communicating with our charity partners. So we have 5 amazing partners on our current research project, which is advancing digital inclusion in low-income families. That's the Smith Family, Your Town, Info Exchange, Good Things Foundation and Leap NGO. And these are national charities who are working on the ground throughout Australia. So we'd be using them to roll out the projects with their own communities on the ground, so the people who are actually working with the families. And also, these are national charities that have really good connections with other organisations around Australia. So we're hoping that we'll achieve some impact through their connections as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of them and I haven't heard of a bunch of charities, so I can only imagine that reach is really great. I guess, when would you expect for this research to be completed?
So we're running 2021 to 2024, so it's actually a long-term project and we're hoping to get some really rich stories from the families that we're working with. Obviously there's been some COVID initiatives, so that we're hoping we'll see the results of that over the next 2 to 3 years. And then yes, by 2024 we'll have some concrete policies that can be implemented.
Perfect. That sounds very exciting. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, just to say that we're at a moment in history, I think, where digital inclusion is at the forefront of public consciousness, and we're really hoping that this research takes that momentum and runs with it to make a difference.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I've really appreciated it. I know that I've learnt a lot today, so I hope that our audience will too. And we would love to see where your research takes you in the future.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Almira.
That's all for Real World News. I'm Almira Azam. See you next time.